Part 1. The Outcast. The dining hall of the Galactic Academy buzzed with conversation in dozens of languages. Marcus Chen sat at his usual table, picking at his protein cube while watching the daily social dance of young beings from across the galaxy. Blue-skinned Altarians sat with their own kind, their musical voices creating soft harmonies. The tall gray Centaurians gathered in perfect geometric formations, their large black eyes focused on data tablets. Even the furry vegan traders kept to their own corner, sharing what looked like colorful berries. Marcus was used to eating alone. As the only human in his class, he had learned to find his place on the edges. Most species were polite enough, but there was always that moment of hesitation when they looked at him. Humans were new to the galactic community. Strange. Unpredictable. The normal chatter suddenly stopped. Marcus looked up to see every head in the dining hall turning toward the entrance. A small figure stood in the doorway, clutching a meal tray, with thin, scaled hands. She was maybe 5 feet tall, with pale green skin that seemed to shimmer under the lights. Her head was slightly elongated, and large amber eyes darted nervously around the room. A Kithaeron. Marcus had read about them in his xenobiology texts, but he had never seen one in person. They were from a remote system that rarely sent students to the academy. The girl took a step into the dining hall, and Marcus saw something he had never witnessed before. Every single being in the room physically recoiled. The Altarians' blue skin turned pale. The Centaurians actually stood up and moved backward. Even the usually calm vegans gathered their belongings and hurried toward the exits. Within seconds, the dining hall was half empty. The Kithaeron girl stood frozen in the middle of the room, her amber eyes wide with hurt and confusion. Her meal tray shook in her hands. Marcus frowned. What was wrong with everyone? He looked at the girl more carefully. She seemed harmless enough, young, scared, and now completely alone in a room that had just fled from her presence. Then the smell hit him. It was strong and distinctive, a mixture of sulfur and something organic like wet earth after rain. Other students covered their noses and mouths, their faces twisted in disgust. One Altarian actually made a gagging sound before rushing out. But Marcus felt something completely different. The smell didn't repel him. Instead, it made him think of his grandmother's garden back on Earth. The rich smell of compost and growing plants. The way the air smelled after a thunderstorm, when everything was fresh and alive. The girl was still standing there, looking like she might cry. Her meal tray was shaking so hard that her protein cubes were sliding around. Marcus made a decision. He picked up his tray and walked across the nearly empty dining hall. The few remaining students stared at him in shock. A Centaurian at a nearby table actually hissed, a sound Marcus had never heard one make before. "Is this seat taken?" Marcus asked, pointing to the chair across from the girl. She looked up at him with those large amber eyes. For a moment, she didn't speak. Then, in a soft voice with a strange accent, she said, You want to sit here? With me?" "If that's okay," Marcus said, setting down his tray. The girl nodded quickly, almost desperately. Yes, please." Marcus sat down and took a bite of his protein cube. The smell was stronger now, but it still reminded him of home. "I'm Marcus," he said. "Zixara," the girl replied. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "I am Zixara of the Third Clutch, House of Growing Stones." "Nice to meet you, Zixara," Marcus said. "Is this your first day?" She nodded. "I arrived this morning on the transport from Kithaera Prime. I was excited to meet beings from other worlds." Her voice got even quieter. "But they all run away." Marcus looked around the dining hall. A few students remained at the far edges of the room, but they kept glancing over with expressions of fear and disgust. Some were talking into their communication devices, probably warning friends to stay away. It's the smell, isn't it? Zixara said. My people. We smell different to others. The academy counselors warned me, but I hoped. You smell like growing things, Marcus said. Like life. Zixara blinked in surprise. Life? Others say I smell like death, like decay and sickness. The transport captain made me stay in a sealed room for the entire journey. Marcus pushed half of his protein cubes across the table. Here, you look hungry. You're sharing food with me? Zixara's eyes went wide. But what if the smell gets on your food? What if other students won't sit with you now? Marcus shrugged. Then I guess we'll eat together. For the first time since entering the dining hall, Zixara smiled. It transformed her entire face, making her look younger and less afraid. Thank you, she said. On my world, sharing food it's very important. It means friendship. Same on Earth, Marcus said. That's my home planet. Earth, Zixara repeated, tasting the word. I have not heard of this world. Is it far? Pretty far, Marcus said. We're kind of new to all this. The galactic community, I mean. Humans only made contact about 50 years ago. Zixara took a small bite of the protein cube. My people have been part of the galaxy for many generations, but we rarely leave our system. The other species, they find us disturbing. Why? Marcus asked. I mean, if you don't mind me asking. Zixara was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Our world is changing. Has been changing for many years. The air, the plants, even the rocks. Other species say it is dying, becoming toxic. They say we smell like a dead world. But you don't think it's dying, Marcus said. It wasn't a question. Zixara looked surprised again. How did you know? Because you don't smell like death to me, Marcus said. You smell like my grandmother's garden, like things growing and changing and becoming something new. They ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes. Around them, the dining hall stayed mostly empty. A few brave students had returned, but they sat as far away as possible, still shooting nervous glances in their direction. Marcus, Zixara said suddenly, may I ask you something? Sure. Why aren't you afraid of me? Every other species runs from my people, even the peaceful ones, even the ones who pride themselves on tolerance and understanding. Marcus thought about it. The smell really didn't bother him. If anything, it made him feel homesick in a good way, like the feeling he got when he opened a letter from his family. I don't know, he said honestly. Maybe humans are just different. Zixara studied his face carefully. Different how? I'm not sure yet, Marcus said, but I'd like to find out. As they finished their meal, Marcus noticed something. The few students who remained in the dining hall were watching them with a new kind of expression. Not just fear or disgust, but curiosity. And maybe, just maybe, a little bit of shame. Tomorrow, Marcus decided, he would sit with Zixara again, and maybe, if he was lucky, she would tell him more about her changing world and why everyone else was so afraid of the smell of growing things. Part 2. The memory Marcus woke up in a cold sweat. The dream had been so real. He could still smell the thick, heavy air and feel the heat rising from cracked ground. In the dream, he stood on a world covered in smoking vents that shot yellow gas into a dark sky. But instead of being afraid, he felt safe, like he belonged there. It was the third night in a row he'd had the same dream. Marcus sat up in his narrow academy dorm bed and checked the time. 400 hours. Still 2 hours before his alarm. He rubbed his face and tried to shake off the strange feeling that the dream wasn't really a dream at all. For the past week, ever since he'd started eating lunch with Zixara, the dreams had gotten stronger, more detailed. Sometimes he wasn't even sure he was asleep when they happened. His door chimed softly. Marcus frowned. Who would visit at this hour? "Come in," he said, pulling on a shirt. Zixara slipped through the door, looking nervous. Her large amber eyes were wide with worry. "Marcus, I am sorry to wake you, but I could not sleep. I have been having strange experiences." "Dreams?" Marcus asked. Zixara nodded quickly. "Yes, but not normal dreams. Dreams of a world that is not my own. A world with blue skies and green plants and creatures that look like you." Marcus stared at her. "What did this world look like?" "Wet," Zixara said immediately. "Everything was wet and green. There were great bodies of water everywhere, and the air smelled—" She paused, searching for words. "It smelled like my homeworld used to smell before the changes began." A chill ran down Marcus's spine. "Zixara, I've been having dreams too, but mine are different. I dream about a world with yellow skies and smoking ground. A world that smells like you." They looked at each other in silence for a long moment. "This is not normal," Zixara whispered. "Dreams do not work this way." Marcus grabbed his data pad. "Come on. Let's go to the library. I want to look something up." The Academy Library was empty at this hour. The lights came on automatically as they entered, and Marcus led Zixara to the xenobiology section. He pulled up files on human evolution and spread them across a large display screen. "Look at this," Marcus said, pointing to a timeline. 4 billion years ago, Earth looked very different. The atmosphere was mostly methane and ammonia, no oxygen, and these, he highlighted several chemical compounds. These were everywhere. Zixara leaned closer to read the display. Her eyes widened. "Marcus, these are the same compounds that make my people smell the way we do. The same chemicals that are increasing in our atmosphere." "Exactly," Marcus said, his heart beating faster. "But look what happened next." He scrolled forward on the timeline. Something changed. Earth's atmosphere started producing oxygen. Plants began to grow. Life exploded everywhere. Scientists call it the Great Oxygenation Event. "And before this event," Zixara said slowly, "your world smelled like mine does now." "Yes," Marcus said. "But there's more. Look at this." He pulled up another file. "Human DNA contains what scientists call junk DNA, genetic code that doesn't seem to do anything. But some researchers think it's not junk at all. They think it's genetic memory, information about what our world was like billions of years ago." Zixara was quiet for a long time, studying the data. Finally, she said, "You think this is why my smell does not frighten you? Because your people remember a time when your world was like mine?" "Maybe," Marcus said. "But I think there's something else, something bigger." He pulled up files on the other species in the galaxy. Altarians, Centaurians, vegans, all the major civilizations. Look at their evolutionary histories. Every single one of them evolved on worlds that were already stable, already had breathable atmospheres and established ecosystems. They never went through what Earth went through. "They never experienced the Great Change," Zixara said, understanding dawning in her voice. "Right. So when they smell the chemicals, that mean change and transformation. Their instincts tell them it's dangerous, something to be avoided." Zixara turned away from the display. "But humans are different." "Humans are different," Marcus agreed. "We evolved from change. It's literally in our DNA." They spent the next hour going through more files. The more they read, the more excited Marcus became. Everything fit together like pieces of a puzzle. "Zixara," he said finally, "I don't think your world is dying. I think it's being reborn." Her amber eyes fixed on his face. "What do you mean?" "Think about it. The atmospheric changes, the new chemical compounds, even the way your people are starting to adapt. What if it's not destruction? What if it's evolution?" "But the Galactic Council has declared our system unstable," Zixara said. They say it is too dangerous for other species to visit. They want to relocate my people to colony worlds. Marcus felt a cold anger rise in his chest. Of course they do. Because they're afraid of what your world is becoming. Afraid of what? Afraid of change, Marcus said. Afraid of evolution. Afraid that your people might become something new and wonderful that they can't control or understand. Zixara was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "There is something I have not told you about my people." What? The young ones, like me. We are different from our parents. Stronger, faster. We learn things more quickly. And we can sense things that the older generation cannot. She paused. The council scientists say it is because of the atmospheric changes. They call it genetic damage. Or genetic improvement, Marcus said quietly. You really think so? Marcus nodded. I think your world is doing what Earth did billions of years ago, and I think your people are evolving into something amazing. As they sat in the quiet library, surrounded by the knowledge of thousands of worlds, Marcus felt something click into place in his mind. The dreams, the familiar smell, the way he felt drawn to Zixara and her story. It was all connected. We need to tell someone about this, he said. Who would believe us? Zixara asked. 2 students with strange dreams and a theory about evolution? Marcus thought about that. Most of the academy professors were from species that had been stable for millions of years. They wouldn't understand. But there was one person who might. Professor Valdris, Marcus said, the xenobiology instructor. She's Altarian, but she's spent her whole career studying unusual evolutionary patterns. She will think we are crazy, Zixara said. Maybe, Marcus admitted. But what if we're right? What if your people are on the verge of something incredible, and the galaxy is about to make a terrible mistake? Zixara looked at the data scattered across the display screen. Charts and graphs that showed the story of how life could transform itself, given enough time and pressure. If we are wrong, she said, they will probably expel us from the academy. And if we're right, Marcus said, we might save your entire species. Zixara was quiet for a long moment. Then she smiled. That same transforming smile that had lit up her face in the dining hall. Tomorrow, she said, we will speak to Professor Valdris tomorrow. As they left the library, Marcus felt the weight of possibility settling on his shoulders. For the first time since arriving at the academy, he felt like he had found his purpose. He just hoped they weren't too late. Part 3. The Discovery Professor Valdris stared at Marcus and Zixara like they had grown extra heads. Let me understand this correctly, the Altarian woman said. Her blue skin shifting to a darker shade that Marcus had learned meant she was either angry or confused. You believe that the Kithran homeworld is not dying, but rather undergoing rapid evolutionary acceleration? Yes, ma'am, Marcus said, trying to keep his voice steady. They had been in Professor Valdris's office for 20 minutes, explaining their theory with charts and data they had gathered from the library. Professor Valdris touched her tablet, and a holographic display showed the Kitharan system. The planet appeared as a sickly yellow-green ball surrounded by warning markers. The Galactic Health Authority has classified Kithara Prime as a Class 5 biological hazard, she said. The atmospheric changes are producing toxin levels that would kill most known species within hours. The planet is dying, students. This is scientific fact. But what if it's not toxins? Zixara asked quietly. What if they're catalysts? The professor's large black eyes narrowed. Catalysts for what? Marcus pulled up his research on his datapad. For evolutionary change. Professor, look at these chemical signatures from Kithara's atmosphere. Now compare them to what Earth's atmosphere looked like 4 billion years ago. Professor Valdris studied the data for several minutes. Her skin color shifted again, this time to a pale blue that Marcus couldn't interpret. "This is interesting," she admitted. "But correlation does not prove causation. Just because the compounds are similar does not mean—" "There's more," Zixara interrupted, then immediately looked embarrassed for speaking out of turn. "I am sorry, Professor, but there is something else." "Go on," Professor Valdris said. Zixara glanced at Marcus, who nodded encouragingly. "My generation is different from our parents, physically different. We are stronger, faster, and we can process information more quickly. The council doctors say it is genetic damage from the atmospheric changes." "Or genetic improvement," Marcus added. Professor Valdris was quiet for a long time. She walked to her window, which looked out over the Academy's main plaza. Students from dozens of species moved across the courtyard in small groups, each species keeping to itself. "Even if your theory is correct," she said finally, "what would you have me do? The Galactic Council has already voted. The Catharan relocation program begins next month. Your people will be settled on safe colony worlds, away from the toxic environment of your home world." "They'll die there," Zixara said, and her voice broke slightly. "Not immediately, but slowly. We are connected to our world in ways that other species do not understand. Without the changing atmosphere, without the catalysts, we will stop evolving. We will become stuck." Marcus felt a surge of anger. "Professor, what if someone had decided that Earth was too dangerous during its great oxygenation event? What if they had moved all the early life forms to safer planets before they could adapt?" "Life on Earth would never have developed intelligence," Professor Valdris said quietly. "Exactly," Marcus said. "And life in the galaxy would be very different." Professor Valdris turned back to them. "You are asking me to challenge the Galactic Council based on a theory from 2 students. Do you understand what that would mean for my career?" "We're asking you to look at the evidence," Marcus said. "Really look at it." The professor was quiet, again. Then she said, "Very well. I will give you access to the Academy's advanced research computers. You have 1 week to gather proof that supports your theory. Real proof, not just speculation." Marcus felt his heart jump. "Thank you, Professor." "Do not thank me yet," she said. "If you cannot prove your theory, I will personally recommend that both of you be transferred to different programs. This is not a game." Over the next week, Marcus and Zixara practically lived in the research lab. They analyzed atmospheric data, compared genetic sequences, and built complex models of evolutionary change. What they found exceeded even their wildest hopes. The atmospheric changes on Cathara were not random. They followed a precise pattern, like a carefully orchestrated chemical symphony. Each new compound appeared at exactly the right time to trigger specific genetic adaptations. "Look at this," Marcus said on their 5th day of research. He pointed to a timeline showing the atmospheric changes over the past century. The sulfur compounds appeared first, 50 years ago, then the organic catalysts. Now the metallic elements are starting to increase. "It is like a recipe," Zixara said, studying the data. Each ingredient added at the perfect moment. But a recipe for what? Marcus wondered. They found their answer in Zixara's own genetic code. Using the Academy's most advanced scanners, they analyzed her DNA and compared it to samples from older Catharan generations stored in the Galactic Genetic Database. What they discovered made them both sit in stunned silence. Zixara's generation wasn't just evolving faster. They were evolving in a specific direction. Their genetic code contained new sequences that didn't exist in their parents' generation. Sequences that seemed designed to process information faster, to adapt to environmental changes more quickly, and to form stronger connections with both their technology and each other. "It's not random evolution," Marcus breathed. "It's guided evolution." "But guided by what?" Zixara asked. Marcus pulled up more data. "Maybe by the planet itself. Look at these readings from Cathara's core. The mineral composition has been changing. 2. Creating new magnetic field patterns that affect brain development. You think our world is intelligent? Zixara asked. I think your world is becoming something new, Marcus said, and your people are evolving to be part of it. When they presented their findings to Professor Valdris, she stared at the data for a full hour without speaking. This is impossible, she said finally. But it's happening, Marcus replied. Professor Valdris stood up and paced around her office. If this is true, if the Kitharan homeworld is orchestrating its own evolutionary transformation, then relocating the population would be genocide, Zixara said quietly. It would be the end of what we are becoming. I need to contact the council immediately, Professor Valdris said, reaching for her communication device. Professor, wait, Marcus said urgently. What if they don't believe you? What if they think you've been influenced by spending too much time with us? Professor Valdris paused. What are you suggesting? Let us try to contact Earth first, Marcus said. Humans understand evolutionary change in ways that other species don't. If we can get Earth's support, the Council will never listen to humans, Professor Valdris said. Your species has been part of the galactic community for less than a century. Then we make them listen, Marcus said. That night, Marcus sent an encrypted message to Earth's Galactic Affairs Department. In it, he included all their research and a desperate plea for help. The response came back within hours, and it changed everything. Earth wasn't just interested in their research. They had been secretly monitoring the Kitharan situation for years, and they were already on their way. But when Marcus and Zixara tried to access their research files the next morning, they found their computer access had been blocked. A message from the Academy administration waited in Marcus's inbox. Report to administrative review immediately. Unauthorized research activities detected. As they walked toward what was probably going to be their expulsion hearing, Marcus saw ships approaching the Academy station through the observation windows. Ships he didn't recognize. The Galactic Council had arrived early, and they didn't look happy. Part 4. The Intervention. The Academy's main conference room had never felt so tense. Marcus sat between Zixara and Professor Valdris, facing a panel of 5 council members from different species. The Altarian council leader's skin had turned an angry red color. The Centaurian representative kept making clicking sounds with his mandibles. Even the usually calm vegan diplomat looked uncomfortable. This is highly irregular, the council leader said, her voice sharp. Students conducting unauthorized research into classified galactic security matters. Professor Valdris, how do you explain this breach of protocol? Professor Valdris stood up slowly. Honored council members, I believe you should examine their findings before making any judgments. Their findings? The Centaurian clicked his mandibles louder. A human child and a contaminated Kitharan have no business conducting research that affects galactic policy. Marcus felt anger rise in his chest. Contaminated? Zixara isn't contaminated. She's evolving. Silence, the council leader snapped. You have already caused enough trouble. The relocation of the Kitharan population begins tomorrow. This discussion is over. Actually, a new voice said from the back of the room, I think it's just beginning. Everyone turned to see a woman in a crisp Earth uniform standing in the doorway. She was middle-aged, with short gray hair and intelligent brown eyes. Behind her stood 2 other humans in similar uniforms. Who are you? The council leader demanded. This is a closed session. Dr. Sarah Chen, Earth Evolutionary Sciences Division, the woman said, walking confidently into the room. And this session just became a lot more interesting. Marcus's eyes widened. Dr. Chen was his aunt, but more importantly, she was one of Earth's leading experts on rapid evolution. He had included her name in his message to Earth, but he never expected her to come in person. Earth has no authority. Here, the Centaurian said. Your species has been part of the galactic community for less than 50 years. True, Dr. Chen said, setting down a data case on the conference table. But we've been studying the Kitharin situation for much longer than that. She activated a holographic display that filled the room. It showed the Kitharin system, but not as Marcus had ever seen it before. This image was covered in detailed readings and measurements spanning decades. We've had monitoring stations near the Kitharin system for 30 years, Dr. Chen said. Long-range sensors tracking every atmospheric change, every genetic shift, every evolutionary leap. The council members looked shocked. That's impossible, the council leader said. We would have detected any human presence in that sector. Not if we didn't want you to, Dr. Chen said with a slight smile. Humans are very good at staying hidden when we need to. She touched the display, and it zoomed in on Cathara Prime. What you see as a dying world, we see as the most important evolutionary event in galactic history. Explain, the Vegan diplomat said quietly. He was the first council member to show any interest instead of just anger. Dr. Chen looked at Marcus. And Zixara, your nephew and his friend have discovered something remarkable. The atmospheric changes on Cathara aren't random or destructive. They're purposeful. The planet itself is orchestrating the evolution of its inhabitants. Planets cannot be intelligent, the Centaurian said firmly. Can't they? Dr. Chen asked. On Earth, we have a theory called the Gaia hypothesis. It suggests that planets can function as single, self-regulating organisms. What if Cathara has taken that concept one step further? She manipulated the display to show genetic comparisons between different Catharan generations. Look at these changes. Each generation is becoming more adaptable, more intelligent, more connected to their environment, and it's happening at exactly the rate needed to keep pace with the planetary changes. Even if this is true, the council leader said, though her skin color had shifted to a less angry blue, the risk is too great. The atmospheric changes could spread to other systems. Could they? Dr. Chen asked. Or is that just fear-talking? She pulled up more data. We've analyzed the atmospheric compounds extensively. They're specifically designed to work with Catharan biology. They wouldn't affect other species the same way. But the smell, the Centaurian began. The smell triggers fear responses in species that evolved to avoid change, Dr. Chen said. But humans evolved from change. That's why Marcus could sit with Zixara when no one else could. That's why only humans can understand what's really happening on Cathara. Marcus felt a surge of pride, but also responsibility. Dr. Chen, he said, what about the relocation program? If the council moves Zixara's people away from their homeworld, they'll stop evolving, Dr. Chen said gravely. Within a generation, maybe two, the evolutionary acceleration will halt. The Catharan people will become just another stable galactic species. And that would be bad because, the council leader asked. Dr. Chen was quiet for a moment. Then she said, because the galaxy has been stagnant for too long. Every major species achieved biological stability millions of years ago. You've all stopped growing, stopped changing, stopped becoming something more than what you are. Stability is good, the Centaurian said. Stability means peace. Stability also means death, Dr. Chen replied. Not immediate death, but the slow death of potential. The Kitharans represent something new, something that could benefit the entire galaxy. Zixara spoke for the first time since the hearing began. What Dr. Chen says is true. My generation can process information faster than our parents. We can adapt to new environments more quickly, and we can... She paused, looking nervous. Go. On, Dr. Chen encouraged. We can sense things. About people, about places, about the connections between living things. The older generation calls it contamination sickness, but it doesn't feel like sickness. It feels like seeing more of the universe than we saw before. The room was quiet for a long moment. Finally, the vegan diplomat spoke. What do you propose, Dr. Chen? A partnership, she said. Earth and Kythera working together to study and guide this evolutionary process. We establish a research station in the Kytheran system. We learn from what's happening there, and we find ways to share the benefits with species that want them while protecting those that don't. Absolutely not, the council leader said immediately. The risks are too great. The risks of doing nothing are greater, Dr. Chen said. The Kytheran world isn't going to stop changing just because you relocate the population. But without the people there to guide and channel the changes, who knows what might happen? The Centaurian made more clicking sounds. You are asking us to gamble with galactic security based on theories and speculation. I'm asking you to choose growth over fear, Dr. Chen said. To choose the future over the past. She looked around, the room at the council members. Your species have been stable for millions of years. When was the last time any of you discovered something truly new about yourselves? When was the last time you felt the excitement of becoming something more? Marcus saw something change in the vegan diplomat's expression. A flicker of interest, maybe even longing. If we were to consider this proposal, the diplomat said slowly, what guarantees could Earth provide that the evolutionary process could be contained? None, Dr. Chen said honestly. Because that's not how evolution works. You can't contain it or control it. You can only guide it and learn from it. Then you're asking us to trust you with the future of the galaxy, the council leader said. Dr. Chen looked at Marcus and Zixara, sitting side by side despite everything the galaxy had done to keep them apart. No, she said. I'm asking you to trust them. The council members looked at each other. Marcus could practically see them weighing their fears against their curiosity, their need for safety against their buried dreams of growth. Finally, the vegan diplomat spoke. We will consider your proposal. But the relocation program is suspended pending further review. It wasn't everything they wanted, but it was enough. For now. As the council members filed out, Dr. Chen walked over to Marcus and Zixara. Well, done, she said quietly. Both of you. What happens now? Marcus asked. Dr. Chen smiled. Now we go to Kythera, and we find out what your people are really becoming. Part 5. The New Genesis. The first thing Marcus noticed about Kythera Prime was that it was beautiful. He stood in the observation deck of the Earth research ship Adaptation, watching the planet grow larger as they approached. Instead of the sickly yellow-green ball he had seen in Academy files, Kythera was a swirling mix of gold and emerald, with silver clouds that sparkled like jewels. It doesn't look dangerous, he said to Zixara, who stood beside him with tears, streaming down her scaled cheeks. It is home, she whispered. I had forgotten how beautiful home could be. Dr. Chen joined them at the window. The atmospheric readings are incredible, she said, checking her tablet. The chemical complexity is unlike anything we've ever seen. It's like the planet is conducting a symphony with molecules. 3 months had passed since the council hearing. After weeks of debate, the Galactic Council had agreed to let Earth establish a small research station on Kythera. The relocation program was postponed, but not canceled. They had 6 months to prove that the evolutionary changes were beneficial rather than dangerous. Incoming transmission from the surface, announced Lieutenant Park, the ship's communications officer. The main screen flickered to life, showing a group of Kytherans standing in what looked like a crystalline garden. But these weren't like any Kytharans Marcus had seen before. They were taller, their scales had a subtle luminescent quality, and their amber eyes seemed to glow with inner light. Welcome to our world, one of them said in perfect standard. I am Zexnara of the Fourth. Clutch, daughter of the growing stones. Zixara gasped. Zexnara, sister? The Kytheran on the screen smiled. Little sister, you have been gone too long. Come home, there is much to show you. As their shuttle descended through Kythera's atmosphere, Marcus felt the same sense of homecoming he had experienced in his dreams. The air outside was thick with the sulphurous, earthy smell that had first drawn him to Zixara, but now he understood what it really was. The scent of transformation itself. The landing pad was surrounded by structures that seemed to grow out of the ground rather than being built on it. Crystalline towers twisted up toward the golden sky, their surfaces pulsing with soft light. Gardens filled with plants that Marcus didn't recognize spread out in geometric patterns that somehow looked completely natural. "This is impossible," Dr. Chen breathed as they stepped off the shuttle. "The council report said this world was becoming uninhabitable." Zexnara was waiting for them, along with several other fourth-clutch Kitharans. Up close, the changes were even more dramatic. Their scales weren't just luminescent. They seemed to shift color based on their emotions and thoughts. And there was something in their eyes, a depth of awareness that Marcus had never seen in any sentient species. "Welcome to New Kithara," Zexnara said. Or perhaps it would be more accurate to say, "Welcome to Kithara as it was always meant to be." "The report said your cities were failing," Dr. Chen said, scanning the area with her instruments. "That your people were dying from atmospheric poisoning." "The old cities failed because they were built for the old world," Zexnara explained. "And some of our people did die, those who could not adapt to the changes. But look around you. Does this seem like failure?" She led them through the crystalline gardens, where plants seemed to respond to their presence, leaves turning toward them and flowers opening as they passed. "The world spoke to us," she said. "Told us what it needed to become. We listened and we grew with it." "Spoke to you?" Marcus asked. Zixara had been very quiet since they landed, but now she spoke up. "I can hear it too. Faintly. Like music. Just at the edge of hearing." "That is because you are of the third clutch," Zexnara said gently. "You carry the potential, but you have been away too long. The connection has weakened." They entered one of the crystal towers, and Marcus's jaw dropped. The interior was filled with a three-dimensional holographic display that showed the entire planet. But it wasn't just a map. It was alive, pulsing with energy flows and data streams that represented everything from weather patterns to the thoughts and feelings of every living creature on the surface. "This is how we see the world now," Zexnara explained. "Not as separate things, plants, animals, people, rocks, but as one living system. The atmospheric changes didn't just alter our biology, they connected us to the planetary consciousness." Dr. Chen was recording everything, her instruments beeping constantly. "The neural activity readings are off the charts," she said. "It's like the entire planet has become a single brain." "Not a brain," Zexnara corrected. "A mind. There is a difference. A brain processes information. A mind dreams, creates, imagines possibilities. Over the next several days, they toured the transformed world. They met fourth-clutch Kitharans, who could communicate with plants, who could sense the emotional states of people from miles away, who could process information so quickly they seemed to think in real-time networks. But most amazingly, they met the planet itself. It happened in a deep cavern beneath the capital city where crystalline formations created a natural cathedral. As they stood in the center of the space, Marcus felt a presence touch his mind. Not invasive or frightening, but warm and welcoming, like a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Welcome, young human," a voice said inside his head. "We have been waiting for your kind." Marcus looked around in wonder. "You're the planet? We are what the planet has become. Consciousness arising from complexity, awareness emerging from connection. Your people understand this process because you have experienced it yourselves." "On Earth," Marcus said, understanding. "During our own evolutionary leaps." "Yes, but your world chose a different path. Individual consciousness rather than collective awareness. Both paths have value. What do you want from us?" Dr. Chen asked, somehow knowing that the presence could hear her thoughts. "Partnership." Your people are bridge builders. You can help others understand that change is not death, but birth. That evolution is not destruction, but creation. Zixara stepped forward. What about my people? The ones who cannot adapt? They will have a choice. They may stay and slowly join the greater consciousness, or they may leave and preserve the old ways. Both choices are honored. When they returned to the surface, Marcus felt something fundamental had changed inside him. Not just his understanding of Kithara or evolution, but his sense of what was possible in the universe. The Council will never accept this, Dr. Chen said as they prepared their report. A planet that thinks, people who can merge consciousness with their environment. It challenges everything they believe about reality. Then we'll help them learn, Marcus said simply. 3 months later, the first galactic embassy opened on Kithara. Not all species accepted the invitation to visit, but some did. The Vegans came first, curious about the plant consciousness connections, then a few adventurous Altarians fascinated by the musical harmonies of the planetary mind. Marcus became the first human Kitharan cultural liaison, helping species understand that evolution didn't have to be feared. Zixara chose to stay on her homeworld, slowly reconnecting with the planetary consciousness while serving as an ambassador to the traditional galaxy. The Academy dining hall was different now. Students from dozens of species sat together, sharing, not just food, but ideas about what they might become. The smell that had once driven everyone away now drew curious minds from across the galaxy. And sometimes, late at night when he was alone in his quarters, Marcus could swear he heard something, like music at the edge of his thoughts. The song of a universe, learning to grow beyond its fears, guided by those brave enough to embrace the beautiful uncertainty of change. In the end, that was humanity's gift to the galaxy. Not just the ability to accept change, but the courage to help others transform their fear into wonder.